The accidental collision. The coffee cup shattered across Daniel Hart's lap, the exact moment Victoria Lane's Louboutin skidded on the cafe's wet floor. But the real collision happened when their eyes met, and neither one looked away. In that suspended breath between stranger and something more dangerous, two people who'd spent years building walls around their hearts felt the first crack appear. She was the CEO everyone feared. He was the widower no one noticed. And in 72 hours, they'd both realized that some accidents are destiny wearing a disguise. Before we dive into this story, I want you with me until the very end. Hit that like button right now and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's begin. The afternoon Daniel Hart chose to finally take a break from drowning was unremarkable in every way except one. It was the afternoon Victoria Lane stopped running long enough to fall. Daniel had left the bookstore, Hart and daughter. The hand-painted sign read, though there was no daughter there anymore, just him and the ghosts of better days, with exactly 43 minutes before Emma's school let out. 43 minutes to sit somewhere that didn't smell like old paper and broken dreams. To drink something hot that someone else made. To pretend for just a few breaths that he was more than a 34-year-old man whose biggest accomplishment was keeping his daughter fed and his grief private. The cafe was one of those aggressively cheerful places with Edison bulbs and reclaimed wood, the kind that charged $7 for coffee and made you feel sophisticated for overpaying. Daniel didn't care about sophistication. He cared about the corner table by the window where nobody bothered him, where he could watch the street, and remember when Sarah used to meet him here on Thursdays, back when Thursdays meant something other than inventory day and overdue bills. He was halfway through a mediocre cappuccino, and entirely through his capacity for optimism when the door chimed. She entered like weather, the kind you don't predict, just survive. Victoria Lane was 41 years old and looked like money. The earned kind, not the inherited variety. Tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than Daniel's monthly rent. Hair pulled back so severely it could have been a strategy. Heels that made a statement with every step. I own this room and possibly this city and definitely don't have time for your nonsense. She was on her phone, naturally. Her voice carried that particular frequency of authority that made baristas straighten their spines. I don't care what the board thinks, Marcus. We're not pushing the launch back because Henderson got cold feet. Tell him if he wants to stay relevant, he'll sign by Friday. And if he doesn't, we'll find someone who. That's when it happened. The cafe floor, freshly mopped by an overzealous employee trying to impress a manager who didn't notice, met the leather sole of a shoe designed for boardrooms, not physics. Victoria's heels slid, her phone sailed, and in the half-second between vertical and horizontal, her body made a choice that would change two lives. She landed directly in Daniel's lap, not near him, not beside him. In his lap, with enough force to knock his cappuccino across the table and enough precision to make eye contact unavoidable. For 3 full seconds, neither of them moved. Daniel because his brain had completely abandoned the task of processing reality. Victoria because she'd just fallen, actually physically fallen, for the first time since she was 12 and thought dignity was negotiable. She started. He tried. Then she laughed. It wasn't polite laughter, the kind you deploy in business meetings when someone's joke isn't funny, but their position is important. This was real, startled, and genuine, and completely unguarded. It transformed her face from boardroom ice to something dangerously human. Daniel felt his own mouth curve despite himself. I was going to say you should buy me dinner first, but given the current economy, I'll settle for explaining why you just assaulted me with designer shoes. Victoria scrambled up, cheeks actually flushing like she was human, like she felt things, and offered her hand to help him up. He noticed her grip was firm, businesslike, but her palm was warm. I'm so sorry, she said and meant it. I wasn't watching where my phone is. Did I hurt you? Only my dignity, and that was already pretty compromised. Daniel surveyed the damage. Coffee everywhere. His shirt sporting a new abstract pattern. Several other patrons staring with the kind of interest people reserve for free entertainment. Though my dry cleaner is going to have questions. Let me pay for that. And here Victoria was already pulling out her wallet, extracting a business card and a $100 bill in one smooth motion. The kind of efficiency that suggested she solved problems by throwing money at them until they disappeared. This should cover the shirt, And what was it? Cappuccino. Daniel looked at the money, then at her, then back at the money. That's $100, he said carefully. I'm aware of denominations, yes. My shirt cost $28 on sale 3 years ago. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe. Or the realization that she just revealed exactly how disconnected she was from the price of normal things. Keep it anyway, she said, but gentler now, less transaction, more person. Call it an apology for. She gestured vaguely at his lap, at the coffee, at the general chaos she'd introduced to his quiet afternoon. I don't need your money, Daniel said, and it came out sharper than he'd intended. He softened it with a smile that felt rusty from disuse. But I'll take the apology, and maybe you could watch where you're falling next time. I don't make a habit of falling. Clearly, you're terrible at it. She laughed again, and this time it sounded almost surprised, like she'd forgotten that was something she could do. I'm Victoria. Daniel. They shook hands properly this time, and Daniel noticed things he probably shouldn't have. The callus on her right index finger from holding pins too tight, the faint circles under her eyes that makeup almost hid. The way she stood like someone ready to fight or flee at a moment's notice. Well, Daniel. Victoria retrieved her phone from where it had skittered under a nearby table, screen miraculously intact. Thank you for being a gentleman about my assault on your person. And your cappuccino. It was a terrible cappuccino anyway, he admitted. You might have done me a favor. High praise indeed. She was already turning toward the door, already transitioning back into whoever she'd been before gravity intervened. Then she paused. The bookstore across the street, Heart and Daughter. Is that yours? Daniel blinked. You noticed that? I notice everything. It wasn't a brag, just fact. It's a lovely shop. Old-fashioned in the best way. Old-fashioned, he repeated. That's generous. Most people say dated, or quaint, or how are you still in business? I said what I meant. Victoria's phone buzzed insistently. She glanced at it, and Daniel watched her face resettle into its earlier mask. Controlled, cool, untouchable. I have to go, but thank you for not suing me. I'll consider it for next time. Let's not have a next time. She left trailing the scent of expensive perfume and the kind of purposeful energy that suggested she had 6 important places to be and was already late to all of them. Daniel sat back down in his coffee-soaked chair and stared at his ruined shirt. He had 36 minutes until Emma got out of school. He was smiling and couldn't quite remember when that had started. But 3 days later, Victoria Lane stood in her corner office on the 42nd floor and wondered when looking down had stopped feeling like power and started feeling like distance. The city sprawled below her, all glass and ambition and tiny people living tiny lives she'd stopped relating to somewhere between her second startup and her first Forbes feature. At 26, she'd built her first company from a dorm room and a credit card. At 32, she'd sold it for enough money to never work again and immediately started working harder. Now, at 41, she ran TechVista, a company that employed 4,000 people and made technology that supposedly brought humans closer together. The irony wasn't lost on her. She just chose to ignore it. Victoria. Her assistant Marcus appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand, face arranged in its perpetual expression of controlled panic. The Japan team needs an answer on the Hioki deal, and Henderson's lawyers sent over the revised contract. Also, your mother called. 3 times. Tell Japan yes. Tell Henderson's lawyers we're not budging on the intellectual property clause. And tell my mother I'll call her back. Victoria didn't look away from the window. You said that yesterday. Then I'll say it with more conviction today. Anything else? Marcus hesitated, which meant bad news was coming. The board wants to move up the quarterly review to next week. They're concerned about the latest user retention numbers. Of course they were. The board was always concerned about something. Numbers, optics, competition, the fact that Victoria refused to pretend the company was a family when it was clearly a machine designed to generate profit. Schedule it, she said, and tell them if they want better retention numbers. Maybe they should stop pressuring me to implement features that prioritize advertising revenue over user experience. I'll rephrase that for diplomacy. You're good at that. Marcus left and Victoria was alone again with her view and her thoughts and the persistent feeling that she'd won a game that didn't matter. Her phone rang. Not the work line. Her personal cell, which exactly 4 people had the number to, and 3 of them were employees. Hello, Mother. Victoria and Lane. Are you avoiding me? Patricia Lane's voice could cut glass and frequently did. She was 71 years old, lived in a brownstone in Brooklyn that had been in the family for 3 generations, and possessed the supernatural ability to make her daughter feel 12 years old with a single sentence. I'm not avoiding you. I'm working. You're always working. When was the last time you ate something that wasn't delivered to your office? Victoria mentally scrolled through the past 3 days and came up empty. Tuesday. It's Friday. Then Tuesday was recent. This isn't healthy, sweetheart. You're going to burn yourself out. And for what? Another 0 on your net worth. Victoria pinched the bridge of her nose, a headache forming behind her eyes that had nothing to do with the fluorescent lights and everything to do with this conversation. I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine. You're not fine. You're 41 years old. You live alone in that sterile apartment. You work 80-hour weeks, and the last time you mentioned a friend, not a colleague, a friend, was 18 months ago. I have friends. Name one who isn't on your payroll. Victoria opened her mouth, closed it. That's what I thought, Patricia said, gentler now, which was somehow worse than the criticism. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I just want you to have a life, not just a career. My career is my life. I chose that. Choosing something doesn't mean it's right. You chose not to eat for 3 days, too. I'm hanging up now. Come to dinner Sunday. I'm making lasagna. I have work. Victoria, Sunday. 6 o'clock. I'm your mother, not your employee. You can't reschedule me. The line went dead. Victoria stood there holding her silent phone and wondering when exactly she'd become the kind of person who needed to be bullied into eating dinner with her own mother. The city below offered no answers. Emma Hart was 8 years old and understood things she probably shouldn't. She understood that Daddy didn't smile as much as he used to back when Mommy was alive, and the bookstore made money and grown-ups didn't have quiet arguments about bills they thought she couldn't hear. She understood that when Daddy said, "We're fine, sweetheart," what he really meant was, "I'm trying as hard as I can and I hope it's enough." She understood that she needed to be good. Not kid good, but perfect good, so Daddy wouldn't have to worry about her on top of everything else. But right now, walking home from school with her hand in his, what Emma understood most was that something had changed. "You're humming," she said. Daniel stopped mid-hum. "Was I?" "Uh-huh. You never hum." "Not since," she trailed off because they both knew how that sentence ended. "I had a weird afternoon the other day," Daniel said, which was true but incomplete. "Met someone interesting." Emma's eyes went huge. At 8, she was already a romantic, sustained on a diet of fairy tales and the unshakable belief that everyone deserved a happy ending, especially her daddy. "A lady? A woman who fell on me in a coffee shop and tried to pay me $100 for my $28 shirt. Was she pretty?" "She was terrifying." "That's not an answer." Daniel looked down at his daughter. So small, so smart, so much like Sarah it sometimes hurt to breathe, and decided that lying to her had never worked anyway. "Yeah," he admitted. "She was pretty in a scary, successful, way out of my league kind of way." "Nobody's out of your league, Daddy. You're the best." His heart cracked and mended simultaneously, the way it always did when Emma said things like that with complete conviction. They reached the bookstore just as the afternoon light hit it at that particular angle that made the old building look almost magical instead of just old. "Hart and Daughter, established 1987, the sign proclaimed, though Daniel's father had started it, and Daniel had inherited it along with the debt and the slowly dwindling customer base and the impossible dream of keeping it alive. Inside, the store smelled like paper and possibility. Shelves climbed to the ceiling, crammed with everything from first editions to damaged stock Daniel couldn't bear to throw away. There was a children's corner where Emma did her homework, a comfortable chair where regulars knew they could read for hours without being bothered, and a constantly optimistic golden retriever named Tolstoy, who greeted every customer like they were his favorite person. It was home, and it was failing, and Daniel was running out of ideas to save it. "Can I pick today's window display?" Emma asked, already heading for the children's section. "Nothing too weird. You said that about the dinosaur tea party, and everyone loved it. Everyone including the 3 customers we had that day." Emma wrinkled her nose at him, and Daniel felt that fierce, overwhelming wave of love that parenthood had taught him, the kind that made every struggle worthwhile and every failure unbearable. The bell above the door chimed. Daniel looked up from the register, expecting Mrs. Chun, who came every Friday for the latest cozy mystery, or maybe Tom, who browsed for hours and bought nothing, but whose company Daniel had come to appreciate. Instead, Victoria Lane walked in. She looked different without the suit, still polished, still expensive, but softer somehow, in dark jeans and a cream sweater that probably cost more than Daniel's winter coat. Her hair was down, falling past her shoulders in a way that made her look younger, less armored. Their eyes met, and Daniel watched surprise register on her face, followed by something that might have been pleasure. "The gentleman I assaulted," she said. "We meet again. In my natural habitat, this time." Daniel came around the counter, suddenly aware that he was wearing his third favorite shirt because his two favorite ones were in the laundry. "I promise the floor is less slippery here. I'll try to restrain myself anyway." Victoria looked around, and Daniel tried to see the store through her eyes. Cluttered, chaotic, charming in a desperate kind of way. This place is wonderful. This place is a mess. Wonderful and messy aren't mutually exclusive. She trailed her fingers along a shelf of poetry, pulled out a worn copy of Mary Oliver, smiled at it like greeting an old friend. "I had a bookstore like this near my college. Spent more time there than in class. How'd that work out for you?" "I dropped out junior year to start my first company." Victoria replaced the book carefully, precisely where she'd found it. "Best decision I ever made, academically speaking. Socially, it was probably a disaster." Before Daniel could respond, Emma appeared from behind a shelf, Tolstoy at her heels. Both of them studying Victoria with identical expressions of curious interest. "Hi," Emma said with the fearless directness of 8-year-olds everywhere. "Are you the scary pretty lady who fell on my dad?" Victoria's laugh was startled and genuine. "That's an accurate, if unflattering summary. Yes, I'm Emma. This is Tolstoy. He's a dog, but also my best friend besides Daddy. Are you here to buy books, or just to look at Daddy?" "Emma," Daniel said, cheeks heating. "People are allowed to just browse." "She's not browsing. She's looking at you." Victoria knelt down too.